In the heart of the American Midwest lies a city whose story is woven deeply into the fabric of the 20th century, a city that once stood as a beacon of industrial might, innovation, and the American dream itself. Detroit, Michigan, was not always synonymous with economic hardship or urban decline. There was a time when Detroit was the unchallenged epicenter of global manufacturing, a proud metropolis that powered not only the United States but much of the modern world. To understand Detroit is to understand the rise and fall of American industry, the promise and peril of technological progress, and the shifting tides of global economics. Our journey begins in the late 19th century when Detroit was little more than a modest Midwestern city with a growing population and a handful of small manufacturing enterprises. The seeds of its transformation were sown by a revolution in mobility, the automobile. The early 1900s marked a period of relentless innovation, and nowhere was this more evident than in Detroit's burgeoning car factories. Entrepreneurs like Henry Ford, the Dodge brothers, and Walter Chrysler saw in the automobile not just a machine, but the future of American society. Henry Ford's introduction of the moving assembly line in 1913 was a turning point, not just for Detroit, but for the world. With his vision of affordable cars for the masses, the Model T rolled off the line with unprecedented efficiency. Ford's innovation slashed production costs, making cars accessible to ordinary Americans and setting the stage for Detroit's explosive growth. The city became a magnet for workers from across the United States and abroad. African Americans fleeing the Jim Crow South during the Great Migration found new opportunities in Detroit's booming factories, as did immigrants from Europe and beyond. Detroit's population soared, and its identity became inseparable from the automobile. By the 1920s and 1930s, Detroit had transformed into the world's manufacturing powerhouse, a city of glittering skyscrapers, lavish theaters, and thriving neighborhoods. The Big Three, Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler, dominated not just the city, but the global automotive industry. Their sprawling factories, such as Ford's River Rouge complex, were marvels of modern engineering, capable of turning raw materials into finished cars under a single roof. The city's prosperity was matched by a vibrant cultural scene, jazz, Motown music, and a spirit of innovation that seemed boundless. World War II would further cement Detroit's reputation as the arsenal of democracy. As America entered the conflict, Detroit's factories pivoted almost overnight to produce tanks, airplanes, and military vehicles. The city's workers, men and women alike, toiled around the clock to supply the Allied war effort. In those years, Detroit symbolized the extraordinary productive capacity of the United States and the promise of industrial capitalism. But the seeds of future challenges were already being planted. The very success of Detroit's industrial model, centralized production, reliance on a handful of powerful corporations, and a focus on mass-market consumer goods would make the city vulnerable to changing economic winds. After the war, as suburbs expanded and highways crisscrossed the nation, Detroit's population began to spread out. White flight, racial tension, and uneven investment led to growing divides between urban and suburban communities. Despite these challenges, the 1950s and 1960s were still years of prosperity. The American automobile was a symbol of freedom, status, and technological progress. Detroit was the city where the future was being built. Yet, beneath the surface, cracks were forming. Foreign competition was on the horizon. Japanese and European automakers began to introduce smaller, more fuel-efficient cars that would eventually challenge Detroit's dominance. Labor relations grew increasingly strained as powerful unions fought for better wages and benefits, and management sought to cut costs. The oil crises of the 1970s hit Detroit hard. As gas prices soared and consumers turned to more efficient imports, Detroit's automakers struggled to adapt. The Big Three were slow to innovate, clinging to large, fuel-hungry vehicles even as the market shifted. Layoffs and plant closures became common. The city's tax base eroded, leading to cuts in public services and infrastructure. Economic hardship fueled social unrest, most notably the 1967 Detroit riot, a tragedy rooted in long-standing racial and economic inequality. By the 1980s and 1990s, the decline had accelerated. Globalization, automation, and technological change upended manufacturing across the United States, but few places felt the impact as acutely as Detroit. Factories that once employed tens of thousands stood silent and empty. Unemployment soared, and entire neighborhoods were abandoned. The city's population plummeted, falling from a peak of nearly 2 million in the 1950s to less than 700,000 today. The proud Motor City became a symbol of American decline, its once glittering skyline a reminder of lost grandeur. Yet Detroit's story is not merely one of rise and fall. It is also a cautionary tale and a source of enduring lessons for today's policymakers and industrial strategists. The forces that shape Detroit's destiny are still at work in the global economy. The tension between innovation and inertia, between global competition and local resilience, remains as relevant as ever. What went wrong in Detroit? At its core, Detroit's crisis was a failure to adapt. The city's automakers were slow to recognize the changing demands of consumers and the threat posed by foreign competition. Investments in new technology and manufacturing processes lagged behind rivals. Meanwhile, urban policy failed to address the deepening divides within the city or to invest in education, infrastructure, and diversification. Detroit became overly dependent on a single industry and a handful of corporate giants, a vulnerability that was cruelly exposed when the tides turned. But Detroit's decline also reflects broader shifts in global industry. The rise of automation and digital technology has transformed manufacturing, reducing the need for labor even as output grows. Global supply chains have allowed companies to source parts and labor from around the world, making it harder for any one city or region to dominate. Economic activity has become more dispersed, and traditional manufacturing hubs have struggled to reinvent themselves. So, what does Detroit's story mean for today's industrial policy? In a world marked by rapid technological change, geopolitical uncertainty, and the urgent need for sustainability, the lessons of Detroit are more relevant than ever. First, innovation is essential. The ability to adapt to new technologies, changing consumer preferences, and shifting global markets is critical for long-term success. Detroit's early triumphs were built on relentless innovation, pioneering the assembly line, engineering new vehicles, and constantly pushing the boundaries of what was possible. That spirit must be rekindled, not only in Detroit, but in manufacturing centers everywhere. Second, resilience matters. Over-reliance on a single industry or a handful of corporations can leave cities and regions vulnerable to shocks. Diversification, investing in a range of industries from advanced manufacturing to technology and the arts, can help insulate communities from downturns. Cities that foster entrepreneurship, education, and creativity are better positioned to weather the storms of economic change. Third, inclusive growth is vital. Detroit's decline was accelerated by social and economic divides between city and suburb, black and white, rich and poor. Industrial policy must prioritize not only economic growth but also equity and opportunity. Investing in education, workforce development, and community infrastructure can help ensure that the benefits of progress are shared more broadly. Today, Detroit is a city in transition. The scars of decline are still visible: abandoned factories, blighted neighborhoods, and a shrinking population. But there are also signs of renewal. Entrepreneurs, artists, and innovators are breathing new life into the city. New industries, from technology startups to electric vehicles, are taking root. The city's rich musical and cultural heritage continues to inspire, and perhaps most importantly, the people of Detroit, resilient, creative, and determined, are writing the next chapter in their city's story. Across the United States and around the world, policymakers are grappling with the challenges of a rapidly changing industrial landscape. The rise of automation, the push for clean energy, and the realities of global competition demand new strategies and bold thinking. Detroit's legacy is a reminder that the future belongs to those who can adapt, innovate, and build inclusive, resilient communities. As we look to the future, the story of Detroit offers both a warning and a beacon of hope. It reminds us that no city, no industry, and no nation is immune to change. But it also shows that with vision, investment, and a commitment to shared prosperity, renewal is always possible. If you found this journey through Detroit's remarkable history insightful, and if you want to explore more stories that connect the past, present, and future of industry, innovation, and society, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us bring you more in-depth narratives and thought-provoking content. Join our community, and let's keep exploring together.